Our recording.
He's getting it. Yeah, there's.
Check, check. Is there any sound coming from? Oh, there's a little bit. Okay, it's getting better. Okay. Now we're going to call this meeting to order.
Two here. Two screen.
Okay. The first motion we have is an approval of the agenda. Moved by Susan and seconded by Craig, that the agenda for the regular council meeting held January the 10th, 2023 be approved as presented. Are there any amendments, Kathy?
Yes, Madam Mayor, there are, under the closed session, which is number 16, I believe, we will have, in regards to, litigation or potential litigation. So that is on as the addition to the,
We have it.
yes, okay, perfect.
Okay, any questions or comments? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, yes. Okay, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in general nature thereof of any item on tonight's agenda by any member of council? Nikki?
Item 6B, Rural Frontenac Community Services Youth Program, a conflict due to it's my place of employment.
Okay. And you do the paperwork for
Yeah.
Kathy? Susan?
I similarly have a conflict for item 6B. I'm the chair of the Board of Directors of Rural Frontenac Community Services.
Okay, and I have a conflict on Mark House's presentation because I'm the treasurer and the warden of the Anglican Church. So we've got a few conflicts tonight. Better to declare. I want to just go back one step, and that is to do the land acknowledgement. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional and unceded territory of the Algonquin Nation. And now we are going to approval of the minutes. Moved by Lynn Clegus and seconded by Susan. Susan Susan Irwin. That the minutes of the special meeting held November the 25th, 2022, and the regular council meeting held December 13th, 2022 be approved as presented. Are there any amendments to those minutes? Nikki?
In the minutes for the regular council meeting, it notes that Dan Proctor made the presentation. It's actually Mike Proctor.
Okay, so we will amend those by adding Mike, changing Mike's name to the right name. Okay, all those in favor? Carried. Put those over there. Mayor's remarks. I do have a few remarks for us tonight. One, I hope everyone had a good Christmas and a good New Year. It was, I think, quiet in most places, but it was nice. Unfortunately, I think our roads folks had to go out Christmas Day and do some work on the roads, or was it before Christmas? It was close anyway. Also want to mention that our Mel Shaw, our technology person, is leaving us. He is going to find something else to do. So the county is hiring another person who will work for us and North Frontenac. We share the technology people. So that's, Mel has served us well over the years. The other thing I want to ask council to think about, and it's coming up in the fire chief's presentation, is we need to have one session to look at the fire master plan. And that will either be a day where we can have lunch and work a bit in the afternoon, or a 4 o'clock meeting that will probably go 2 or 3 hours. So think about what you want to do, and when our fire chief is up, you can tell him what your preferences is. Okay, anything from the Deputy Mayor Smith?
Nothing at this time.
Pardon?
Nothing at this time.
Okay. All right, we've moved our delegations up after I read this motion, I think. No.
No.
All right. The procedural bylaw is being changed, and we will be adding delegations at this point of the meeting. That way, if people need to leave, they can, or they can stay for the whole meeting. So our first is the Manager of Planning and Economic Development, Frontenac County, Joe Gallivan. Joe? You're here with 5 brand new people and 4 not so new people.
Thank you, Mayor. And yes, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Joe Gallivan. I'm the Director of Planning and Economic Development with the county. So we work closely with your staff, with Cindy, Crystal, Andy, and Kathy on all the planning applications. If I know you're getting inundated with training right now. I know you haven't even had a committee of adjustment meeting, and it's hard to take all this stuff in. I appreciate that. The reason I'm here tonight is to ask you to consider for your upcoming budget to allocate some money for a planning project we'd like to initiate across the county. So I'm speaking to you this afternoon. I'll be speaking to North Frontenac Council on Friday, then South Frontenac Council next Wednesday, and then Frontenac Islands Council in early February to ask you to consider allocating some money in your budget to look at this planning tool that we've been looking at for the last 2 years. When I say we, it's an effort on the part of township staff and the county planning staff to look at improving the planning process, making it easier, more efficient, and less time consuming for both applicants, but also in reducing the time we spend on some of these planning files. I just finished doing year-end review of all the planning hours we accounted for last year. Just to give you an example, last year, slightly over 1,000 hours allocated to Central Frontenac Township, which is almost the same as it was in 2021. And of course, part of that has to do with the demand through the pandemic for planning inquiries and everything. But of that total, more than 200 hours was spent preparing the planning reports that you see when you're at the Committee of Adjustment. This planning tool I'm going to speak to you briefly about tonight will help reduce some of that workload if we move forward to it. So do you have the slide presentation there? Thank you. So again, I'm pleased to be here tonight, and I know there's a lot of new faces. I just want to give you a brief overview of what this permit system is. It's called a community planning permit system, and it can bring a lot of benefits to protecting the lakes in the township, and that is the main priority, lake protection. A second priority, as I've already alluded to, is the permit system could result in a significant reduction in time for planning approvals compared to the current process that may involve a rezoning, a minor variance through the Committee of Adjustment, or even a site plan application, or all three. So as I say, it's another tool we're hoping to use collectively on some of the process improvements we've been doing with your staff in the last 3 to 4 years. Can you go back one, please? So as I say, it's a relatively new planning tool in the province. If we get it in place, it will replace zoning, variances, and site plans into one approval process. It's certainly, based on the research we've done, is a far better tool for shoreline and lake protection that we have available to us now. Now, it can be used in the entire municipality or just certain areas. Our recommendation will be is if we move forward with this project, that we focus on the waterfront for now. You've got a brand new zoning bylaw that's pretty solid, but we think that this permit system can even make a better approval process for the waterfronts. So next, please. So the permit system allows for variation in the standards. So right now you have a zoning bylaw that says you have to be set back this far from the water. If you're putting an addition on, it can only be this much, and so on and so forth. And if you're asking to use the minor variance as a safety valve, for example, then you have to go through the Committee of Adjustment. And for those of you who've been on the Committee of Adjustment, you know that every planning application is not the same. Sometimes an addition to a cottage is relatively small, and the impact on the neighbors in the waterfront might be small, but you go through the same process as someone who wants to tear down a cottage that may be 600 square feet and build something that's 3 or 4 times that size. So this process will allow some minor projects, and that would be a decision of council, to be approved by staff rather than going through that process. It also can regulate the removal of vegetation as well as control site alteration. Now, you can do that under the Municipal Act right now. You can pass a site alteration bylaw, which you don't have right now. You can pass a tree bylaw, which you currently don't have, and none of the townships have. So what happens now at Committee of Adjustment, we can put those conditions in, but then they're subject to another contract, another thing called a development agreement, which has to be signed between the landowner and the township, and it costs legal fees and more time. This puts it all into one approval, and it really reduces the time frame. Next, please. So this is just a flow chart of what I've been talking about, the different planning tools and tools under the Municipal Act that can be folded all together into this one community planning permit system. And please ask me any questions as I go on. I don't have a lot of slides, but don't hesitate to interrupt.
Then I have a question.
Sure, please.
Okay. I know you're promoting this permit system as a way of protecting our lakes and resources, which I'm really thrilled about. What I'm not quite grasping is how it does that, because I see that the focus is on increasing the efficiencies with the ability to eliminate certain delays in processing minor variances, but I'm not catching the nub of how it protects our lakes and resources.
So that flow chart is a good example. That's a good question. Thank you for asking it. So I have spoken to efficiencies, and it will reduce time for the applicant potentially. Not, again, I'm talking on smaller projects, not the big ones, which would still be dealt with by the Committee of Adjustment. But that's a secondary issue. The biggest issue, and I'll show you an example here in a moment, this allows much better opportunities for staff to say, okay, you're going to need to plant trees over here. If you're adding this deck, we want to make sure that you don't alter the shoreline, or you have to improve the shoreline, those kinds of things. We can't do that right now with the tools we have. So whether the permit system allows staff an opportunity to be delegated some approvals and improve the process, or whether they come to council for some of these more complicated files, you'll have more tools available to you to protect the waterfront than you do now. You have to take all these things in different approvals. It would now be dovetailed into one system, and you'd be thinking of all of this at the same time. Did I answer your question? Okay, thank you.
Joe, would this also encourage people to get a permit when they're trying to do these things that they shouldn't do, because it's not going to take forever to get it done, and it's not going to cost them $4,000 to do it?
Yes, Mayor. I didn't think of that, but I think that's a fair comment. That if the process is a little more efficient and they see everything that a property owner has to deal with all at the same time, rather than in different steps, that could help as well. Could be more proactive in maintaining the waterfront character. Okay, next slide, please. So as I said, the permit system, some of the approvals can be delegated to staff, and that is a decision you will make. You may say, okay, if it's a 5% change in the variances, then staff can do the approvals. That's a decision you'll make as we go. If we get the budget approval and we go through this process, the result will be one template, one bylaw for all 4 townships, but they'll be fine-tuned for each township, depending on the level of control you want and your threshold of council involvement. So if the approvals are delegated, they don't require public notice under the Planning Act, so that because it doesn't go to the Committee of Adjustment. And that's where I say it's streamlined. There's an efficiency there for relatively minor changes. If there's council approvals, then a public notice will be required. The difference is only the applicant can appeal a decision to council, not neighbors on these files. And again, I know you're getting a lot of information here, and I respect that. I'm just trying to give you a very high level. Next, please. So before the permit system is put in place, 2 big things that would need to be done, and they would involve full public involvement. You would have to do an amendment to your relatively new official plan that sets out, here's where we're going to do the permit system. For example, we're going to focus on lakes, not the entire township. And here's the things we want to control in terms of protecting the lake. And you've already got really strong policies in your existing official plan about lake protection. So this would be a complement to that. And then you have to prepare the bylaw. And without getting into a lot of detail, it's very similar to what a zoning bylaw looks like. It's the devil will be in the details in this bylaw in terms of what kind of requirements you want to set out. So in these two approvals, there will be full public notice and public meetings, and citizens can appeal both the official plan amendment and the bylaw at that time. And just to be clear, consents, severances are not part of the community planning permit system. They'll still be dealt with exclusively by your committee of adjustment. Next, please. So again, implementation, the permits will be issued by either at the decision of council or by staff before they can get a building permit. I mentioned the words multiple class levels here. So the bylaw will set those thresholds I've spoken about in terms of what is considered minor and can be approved by staff and which ones should be dealt with by council and reviewed by the public. And as I've already said, it certainly can provide a greater protection for water bodies and shorelines. Next, please. So one example I want to show you is a municipality in Muskoka called Lake of Bays Township. They've been using this permit system for about 15 years. And the reason we've reached out to them, starting having discussions, they're very similar to our geography. They have waterfront pressures. They're a lake community, some small villages, but they're very similar to Central Frontenac and North Frontenac. So we have been consulting with them to see how well the system has been working, and they're very pleased with it to a point now. They are, so 10 years, 15 years after they've focused this on their waterfront, they've now decided to use this permit system across the entire municipality and repeal their zoning bylaw. In other municipalities that use this, there's the town of Carleton Place near Ottawa. They've been using it for over a decade for their entire municipality. Town of Gananoque as well uses it for their main street. So, but not a lot of places have used it. It is a relatively new tool. The other thing I want to speak briefly about it, for those of you who were on council back in 2020, you may remember we collectively, the 4 townships and the county, did a major service delivery review in 2020. All of us were involved in this. The company strategy court reviewed all parts of municipal operations with the goal of finding efficiencies and cost savings. If you recall, Mayor and Kathy, they looked at everything: fire services, public works, planning, filing systems, everything. Next, please. So one of the recommendations had to do, and I'm sorry if that's hard to read, but they did talk about looking at planning efficiencies. And next, please, next slide. They specifically spoke about the committee of adjustment process, and they recommended that we look at another way of reviewing waterfront protection, and noted that sometimes it takes up to 3 months to deal with one application. So in the last year, we dealt with over 70 planning applications in the township. The year before, we dealt with 104. So that's a lot of time and effort for staff, both the township office and for our planners. Next, please. So they did recommend we look at the community planning permit system, but to your point, Councillor, this is about efficiencies and not about lake protection. They were focused on cost savings and efficiencies, not lake protection, but that is the secondary issue here. The primary issue is, in our opinion, it's a better tool to protect the waterfront. So I think I have one more slide. So the budget proposal is, we would do this with all 4 townships. If you agree to set aside the money in your budget, we're recommending an upset limit of $25,000. We won't put that dollar figure in the RFP we put out. I'm actually confident we can get a budget of less than $100,000. So we'd hire a consultant jointly to prepare a draft bylaw template. County planners would manage the project along with township staff. So we'll take care of setting up all the public meetings, all the public consultation. We'll also do our GIS people will do all the mapping, and we'll also be responsible with township staff for public engagement. So I think that's one more slide. So that's my overview to council. I know it's a lot of information, but I'm hopeful that you'll consider that as part of your budget process, Mayor. Thank you.
Any questions or comments for Joe? Sorry, Bill?
Sorry, financial savings. You say it's a budget of $100,000. And you said Central Frontenac used 1,000 hours last year, roughly.
Yeah, no, that includes everything. That includes all the work we did, not just sorry, apologies. That's everything. And I can go over this with Kathy, but it didn't involve just the day-to-day applications, but for example, it also included the work we did on the Charlotte Lake School feasibility study, which was close to 80 hours of our time.
I realize, but is there an anticipated financial savings
Yes.
with, has that been calculated or is just assumed right at the moment?
It hasn't been calculated, but again, just looking at some of my notes. So of all the over 1,000 hours in Central last year, 200, excuse me,
Report.
180 on report writing. And also review and consultation, because we have to go through every applicant in detail for every application, because most people go through this process once. And it's part of our job to explain the process to them. So it's not like they show up at your counter and it's a 5-minute conversation. We have to spend that time. That was 160 hours. So that's almost 370 hours right there. I'm fairly certain if we get this to work, that can be reduced by quite a bit, because we won't have to spend time writing the reports. We won't have to spend a lot of pre-consultation time. And the other benefit is that all of the information will be upfront to the applicant. To your point, Mayor, I think it'll be a more positive approach for them in terms of developing in the township.
Thank you.
Okay, Nikki?
Thank you through you, Madam Mayor. Joe, if this plan's based on all 4 townships buying in, if only 1 or 2 buy in, obviously the cost will go up, but will you go forth if you don't have buy-in by all 4 townships?
Through you, Mayor, that's a decision we would have to make. If we're, for example, if we end up with only 2 townships, we would have to come back and say, do you still want to do it? South Frontenac is talking to their staff. They're definitely in. And I'm fairly confident North will be in. They're understanding, they're in the same issue as you are. They actually went up in hours last year. They went up more than 10% in our planning hours. So, but if we don't get all 4, we'll come back and get you to confirm that you still want to make that investment.
Joe, if you didn't get all 4, the price would be different as well?
I can't say for certain, because the result will be the consultants are going to prepare a template. So even if there's only 3 rather than 4, that template's not going to change. Our time will be reduced, but having said that, our time on this project is not going to be billed to the townships. It's a regional project that benefits everybody. So we're going to consider it as county regional planning work. So there'll be no extra hours allocated to the township on our work on this file.
Okay. Lynn?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Are there any changes or implications from the Bill 23 that just has been going through with the conservation authorities that will affect your planning and execution of this? Because you say it was done in Lake of Bays 15 years ago. This recent change with the government kind of changes a lot of that. So has that been considered?
So I've been a planner for 35 years. And I've never seen the pendulum swing so far in terms of reducing the ability to do good planning. It's a government decision, which has to be respected. It's been on December 28th, the Ministry of Environment wrote a letter to make it abundantly clear that the conservation authorities are no longer to be involved in land use planning files. We can't even contract them out. For example, right now we have a contract with Cataraqui for Frontenac Islands. We can't even do that. So that's a question that, again, collectively, we're going to have to deal with. And I think we're going to try to tackle it at a CAO's meeting in March. Because we don't have, as planners, we don't have the expertise to provide the input on the natural environment. We're going to need somebody to help us. And I'm part of the County Planning Directors Network. And I can tell you that There's been a whole bunch of emails in the last 3 weeks about what collectively, how are we going to solve this problem? And on Bill 23, we are working on a report to bring to each township council to give you more details on the implications.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Philip and then Dan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Joe, I'm still a little confused about the protection of the waterfront or shorelines. Can you give us a real life example of how the current model works and how this might improve that for us?
So right now, every planning application that requires a minor variance has to go to the committee of adjustment. And under the Planning Act, you have only certain authorities to put conditions of approval in when you're looking at an application. If you want to put something in, for example, about tree protection, you have to put a condition in that says the property owner has to enter into a development agreement with the township. And that's a specific contract that requires your lawyers and their lawyers to write a contract. And quite frankly, because that is a separate issue that's not part of the committee of adjustment decision, sometimes years later, those things get lost in the, people come and go and whatever. With the community planning permit system, we're able to look at a proposal more holistically because we'll have more tools to say, okay, you can have this addition. But however, just like we have right now, we make recommendations about certain setbacks, but at the same time, we can say, okay, you've altered your waterfront area. You've cut trees down or whatever. We want you to plant some more trees back there. We want you've dug into the slope of your property. We want you to bring in some fill to stabilize that slope. Those things aren't possible right now, but they can be under the permit. So before a building permit has been issued, all of those conditions will be in front of the building inspector, and those things will have to be met up front at the time the permit's issued. Is that clear?
Okay, thank you. Danny?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. When Glenn updated the official plan in October, the setbacks now are greater for bigger places. Would that create more minor variances? Was anything discussed with Glenn on?
We weren't part of the zoning bylaws, so I really can't comment on that. But what this will do, just so you're clear, if the permit system moves ahead, the zoning on the waterfront will be superseded by the permit system. There'll be another set of maps setting out what you can and can't do. So you can revisit that at that time. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, sir. Okay.
And just to add to that, Joe, we can do zoning changes under our housekeeping within the first year. So if there are zoning changes of distances and the like, we can make those changes quickly.
Yes, Mayor, and I saw an email from you from a builder the other day, and Sonia Bolton, who's our manager of planning, responded. So we're working with Cindy and Crystal to bring back to council, hopefully in the 6-month period of the bylaw being passed, with some recommended changes, those housekeeping things you're talking about.
Sure. Yeah, and we will be doing that. Turn your mic off. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you very much, Joe. I have a motion moved by Susan and seconded by Craig that council receive for information the presentation from Joe Gallivan, Director of Planning and Economic Development, County of Frontenac, regarding the community planning permit system. And further, that council consider the funding request of $25,000 during the 2023 budget deliberations. Any more comments? All those in favor? And that will be happening later this January.
Yeah.
Week or so. All right. Next, we have Sarah McCullough from Rural Frontenac Community Services Youth Program. Still with her boot on. Oh, perfect. Just push that button and speak right into the mic. Okay.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Sarah McCullough, and I am the Youth Program Supervisor with Rural Frontenac Community Services. And I also have here with me today Louise Moody, who is our Executive Director. So let's get into it. So we know we have a pretty new council this year, so we wanted to give you guys an overview of who we are and what we do. I'll wait for us to get up the slideshow here. You can go right to slide 2 there. Yeah.
Now, remember that council got your presentation, so if you could maybe highlight some of those, you don't have to.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
I got you.
good.
Yeah, so for those of you guys who don't know who Rural Frontenac is, Rural Frontenac Community Services and what we do, we are a one-stop shop hub of services, serving everyone from cradle to walker, we like to say, including daycare, early on youth programs, family counseling programs, transportation programs, and seniors programs. Next slide, please. Our agency's mission is to enable people in our community to live rural life to the fullest. We do this through delivery of all of our different programs to our community, primarily in Central and North Frontenac, with some of our programs outreaching down into South Frontenac. And as you can see on this, I've listed some facts about all of our different programs. And if you would like to hear any more on those programs, our staff would be happy to come back and present on those for you. But today, we're here to talk about the youth program. So the next slide, please. And you can skip right over that one. There you go. So our services and programs, the youth program is huge. We serve ages 6 to approximately 21. We say to 21 because youth with special needs can attend high school until the age of 21. So our program is one of a kind and is the only one of youth programs in Central and North Frontenac. So I think that's really important for you guys to understand. We don't have youth centers here. We don't have recreation centers for our youth to go and gather and play and build social skills and leadership skills and development skills. What we have is our youth program. And we do this through a variety of different services, including day camps and kids club and youth groups and programs that support low-income families with boots and backpacks and snowsuits. We also do the youth outreach worker, which is myself. I work to support youth needing access to mental health services, counseling services, addiction services, food supports, job search, everything under the sun that they need it. I try to find a way to help them with it. I also run groups in the school with the adolescent care worker to cover other areas of need, such as LGBTQS+ groups, girls groups, guys groups, mental health support stuff, everything that we can. My motto kind of is with the youth program, if a youth asks me that they want something, I do my best to find a way to make it happen for them. So our next slide. Central Frontenac, we're here to talk about what we do here in our township for our youth. So in Central Frontenac, we run weekly kids club, we run leadership programs, we run March break camps, summer programs, youth month contests, and last year we had the Building Resiliency for Rural Youth grant. Next slide, please. Central Frontenac Township, you guys, last year funded us for our Kids Club program and have been funding us since approximately 2010 for this program. Our Kids Club program, for those of you who aren't aware of it, is a 1 night a week after school program serving a variety of ages at 5 different locations. In Central Frontenac, we attend on Mondays, Granite Ridge Education Center for grades 4 to 8. Wednesdays, we are at Atlanta Lakes Public School for grades 4 to 8, and Fridays, we run at our Child Center location of the Playroom for grades 2 to 4. This after-school program is the only after-school program in Central and North Frontenac and is the only program available for after-school programming for youth in this community. We offer snacks, games, crafts, and a variety of different activities that help develop leadership skills, social skills, and self-care development. So November is always our self-care month, and we do special activities like developing fidget toys, talking about mental health, and preparing youth for the time over Christmas break that they're going to be home, because sometimes home isn't the best place to be. Next slide, please. So we wanted to tell you a bit about This is a presentation on what we do, but also we want to tell you what we did with your funding from last year, for those of you guys who don't know. So last year with your funding at the beginning of the year, halls were closed, everything was still shut down. So we moved outdoors. It didn't stop us. We moved outdoors. We offered outside programming. Once indoor programming was allowed, we came back in and we started some really specific group programming that youth had requested us to do. And then thankfully, in September, schools opened back up and we were allowed to go back in and started our kids club programming, which is full at all locations. We max at 15 kids per site, and we have a wait list for each of our sites in Central Frontenac at this time. So some of the fun things we thought we'd highlight for you guys, next slide, please, is we got to run a STEAM group, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Art, and Math. We did a host of different experiments with youth, including separating pepper from salt and turning milk into plastic, which you'll see in this image, which is vinegar, and it really smells. I don't recommend for the smell, but it was so much fun, and I was really well attended by our youth in a time where things were still just starting to open up. We also, next slide, please, got to run a What's Cooking youth group, which developed healthy eating skills and cooking skills within 13 youth who attended this program over 4 weeks. They ended the program with making their very own vegetable pasta sauce, pasta, garlic bread, and Caesar salad, which we enjoyed with their families at the end of the night. And it was, again, well attended and so much fun. We made oatmeal muffins and we made our own pizzas, and it's just fantastic to teach those skills to our youth. Next slide, please. The youth program also works hard to have leadership development within our youth. Through our kids club, we have youth who are youth leaders who help run games and activities, but we also provide a youth advisory committee made up of high school age youth in our township and in North Frontenac and in South Frontenac, who work with me to address what are the needs of youth in our community, what are they seeing as priorities for things that they want to do. And we also provide workshop opportunities, including our babysitters course, which we try to run at least twice a year. And we just got recertified last year for our home alone, staying home alone course, which we'll be offering again this year. Our YAC group, which is Youth Advisory Committee, also gets to attend specialized programs offered by other youth service agencies throughout KFL&A. Next slide, please. We also want to highlight March Break Camp because it was amazing, and we hadn't got to run March Break Camp for 2 years because of COVID. It was so much fun. Our kids get out and use our snowshoe lending library. We built snowmen, and we made casts of our hands. The ones that are like this got turned into bunny rabbits. It was fantastic. Our summer camp. Let's move to the next slide, please. So we run a 7-week, 3-day-a-week summer camp. Last year, we upped it to 20 kids per day from 15 the previous year. We were full almost every week. And the weeks that we weren't full, I mean, we weren't full by 1 kid. We had 38 different children attend our camp over those 7 weeks, and it was an amazing time. So the camp runs Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. We run out of, last year we ran out of St. James Hall, and days that wasn't available, we came here and we used the Oso Hall and went down to the beach and had some fun days there as well. Thank you again for allowing us to use the hall for that space. Well, we know that camp is not always accessible to everyone that we fill so fast. So we also provided pop-ups across the county to engage more youth so that they can have opportunity. We make sure our camp is affordable for everyone. The cost of our camp is only $20 a day, and subsidy is available for our families. And often we have families who pay about $10 a day or lower. Next slide, please. May is Youth Month in the youth program, and this year we celebrated with a Youth Month celebration at the end of May hosted by our Youth Advisory Committee. And we want to thank Council for celebrating with us and the fire department for coming and hanging out with us, and had Sparky there, and the kids had a great time. We had between 30 and 50 youth. It was hard to tell because it was just everywhere, but it was an amazing time. We also host Mental Health Week at the school, and we gave out kits to work on celebrations and photo contests. And these are photos entered by youth in Central Frontenac. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned earlier, we had a grant from November of 2021 up until the end of October last year for building resiliency for rural youth. This was from the community foundations of Kingston, Frontenac, and area. This grant has recently run out. Part of this grant was a bi-weekly youth group in Parham, which we ran out of the United Church Hall. We had 27 youth come through this group over the year, which is a pretty great attendance for Parham. Since the Parham's so small, we had youth coming all around and friends coming with them. It was amazing. We have decided, because of the popularity of this group, that we are going to continue to run it at this time using funding from other donors and grants that we may achieve throughout the year. Next slide, please. Something that I want to bring to your attention is prior to COVID, we had a youth hub space that we were offering across from the bank at our center location, which some of you might have known as the senior center. It's just the center because you go there too. And so prior to COVID, we were running bi-weekly there. We are hopeful that we will be running again there come February. I was injured in the fall, so I wasn't able to open it then, but we're hoping next month we'll be open and we'll be back and getting youth out for that. Youth come and they can have access to food and games and hang out, socialize, but they also have the opportunity to connect with me as the outreach worker. We've also joined forces with the KFLNA Youth Wellness Hubs of Ontario, which is a group that just received funding at the middle of last year. So this partnership with them will allow us to bring more youth services out into the hubs that will be accessible for our youth, such as nurse practitioners, psychiatrists, counselors, food development services, all sorts of different things for our youth. Next slide, please. We want to say how thankful we are for the $15,500 that you funded us with last year for our Kids Club program. It is an integral piece of our program. It is something that many of our families look forward to. And we really, it is the main source of funding for our Kids Club program specifically. Next slide, please. So I gave you in the slideshow our 2023 budget. So I'll let you look over that. And I know you've all seen it. And I put in the notes on the slideshows, if you haven't noticed, that there's a breakdown of how those costs are built. So you can see that as well. Next slide, please. Something to note with our budget is that with everything since COVID, costs have increased. Prior to COVID, we were receiving food donations from the Food Share Project to provide healthy snacks and cooking opportunities to our youth. Since then, we no longer have access to that. So that has increased the cost of our program by $200 per month. This is a significant increase for something that is a condensed program. So we want to, at this time, request our funding for 2023 of an increase of $1,800. This is $600 per Kids Club. We have also asked this of our other township fundings for Kids Club. So our funding request for 2023 is $17,300. You will know in the budget beforehand, the actual cost of running Kids Club in Central Frontenac at our 3 sites is $22,750. So we do fundraise and ask for donations to help it reach that gap within our funding. Next slide, please. I'd also like to mention that as I said, we collect donations and things. The youth program is fully grant funded. All of our funding comes from grants that I apply to or from municipalities such as yourself for specific programmings. So when we don't receive a grant, we don't have the money to run something. So we are very reliant on our grants and things. Our confirmed grants for this year is that we have the continuation of the bill of the Trillium Foundation Resilience and Community Fund, which is continued from 2022 and will be ending at the end of April. And we have the renewal of our Bridging Gaps for Rural Youth program from United Way, which helps cover some of the other programs that we do. And that is my wonderful presentation. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Your presentation and your animation kind of wakes us up and brings us alive. And you also remind us that we have a lot of kids in our area that every now and then, I don't think there's that many kids around, but there are those kids around, lots of them.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, through you, I could say I'm working on my United Way report for last year right now. And in the United Way programs that partially fund our pieces of different programs, we identified 261 unique individuals who received supports from our program over last year alone.
Excellent. Any questions or comments from anyone? I'll read the motion, and if you have some, we can include them after that. Moved by Bill and seconded by Dan that council received the presentation from Sarah McCullough, Youth Program Coordinator, Rural Frontenac Community Services Youth Program, for information. And further, that council consider the funding request of $17,300 during the 2023 budget deliberations later in January. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried. So we are meeting in January to begin our budget and hope to finish it first
Okay.
part of February.
Okay.
Okay, next we have Mark House, and this is where I exit.
So Deputy Mayor. To
Yes.
come and sit.
You have to take my chair. I'll get rid of my pillow.
Anything special we have to do there?
He's just
Ask Mark to go ahead and start the
Yeah.
presentation.
received the presentation, but this is after.
Okay.
Okay, have him go ahead and explain.
Evening, Mark. Thanks for coming. If you want to do your presentation.
Yes, I'd like to have a presentation about St. James Anglican Church. First, I'd like to thank council for allowing me to come here and discuss this matter with you. And I hope you will consider my proposal. St. James Anglican Church was a part of the Parham community for 133 years. As of 2.5 years ago, none of us here would have ever thought that this disaster would have happened, where our church burnt to the ground. It was a part of my life for 65 years. It was my parents' church. It was my grandparents' church. And many of my friends and relatives who I knew over the years attended there as well. My proposal, I would like to set up a memorial. I understand that we do have some property available to the north side of the post office in Parham for it. I do have the sign that was at the church, and I also have the bell that was recovered from the church after the fire. I think everybody got a copy of my diagram there. It's just but what I would propose. The sign itself probably stands, I'd say, probably at least 6-7 feet high. I would request if we could pour a cement pad of some kind down there in the area in question. Instead of putting the posts in the ground, I would kind of recommend putting them onto the cement pad and kind of anchor them into the cement rather than put them in the ground. And the bell at the present time, it's anchored on 4 4x4s. It's bolted in. But that would have to be also if there was room there, so we could anchor it into the cement as well. I have had a few people come forward with possible making donations toward this venture. I being one of them. We'd also, there was also a painting that was made up shortly after the fire happened by a local artist. And I'd like this painting to also be a part of the memorial as well. Given the fact that this building was a milestone or of our community for so many years, I would like to see it not to be forgotten. When something is here for 133 years, it was a place of worship. It was a place for people to gather. Something like that should not be forgotten. So I leave it with council. If they have any questions, I'd be open to any questions.
So, Mark, there is a motion. I'm not sure if you're aware of the motion, but it was moved by Susan Irwin and seconded by Lynn Clagus. The council received the presentation from Mark House regarding the proposed memorial for the Parham Church, and further that council agree in principle to the proposed memorial and direct public works and planning staff work with Mr. House to facilitate the best location for the memorial. So at this time, if there's any questions from council of Mr. House? Go ahead, Jack.
Will it be on the church property, Mark, or you mentioned the post office?
Yeah, this piece of property, it's to the north side of the post office, just in that area. We cannot put up a memorial where the church was. That property, it belongs to the Diocese of Ontario. In a perfect world, I wish we could have, but we're not able to because the diocese owns the property. And if something was put up there, they would not take responsibility for it. But this piece of property in question, it would suffice.
So the diocese wouldn't give you permission to put the sign there then as well?
No.
Any further questions? Cindy?
I think this is a great idea because I think we should always preserve our history in the area. So it's nice to have this go up. But my one question would be to Tyson, is this going to affect your snow removal at that spot? That's my one question.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Kelsey, we've already taken a preliminary look at the Councillor Smith, Deputy Mayor Councillor Smith.
Yes, definitely.
We've already taken a preliminary look at the area, and as most of you know, it is an area where we do snow removal in the night for when we have a big storm. We stockpile a lot of snow in that area for temporarily, but we're going to find a place to make it work because that's a very important piece of history to preserve. So.
So I certainly support a memorial. I'm just wondering, you mentioned that the diocese didn't want responsibility for maintaining it. So who would be responsible for maintaining it? Are there any costs associated with the township?
I'd have to put that in the hands of the township because apparently this property, it belongs to the township. This piece of property, so you'd have to discuss that with them.
Well, that clarifies things because I didn't realize the property was the township, so that helps. Thank you.
So that can be part of the discussions with Public Works when they're. Any further questions? If not, we'll call a vote. All in favor? Carried.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your concern about this matter, and I look forward to working with you. So thank you very much, Council.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay. Yes, next we have Oliver Cloud. Come on up. Okay, Oliver, if you want to go ahead and explain your request.
It was, excuse me, it was brought to my attention when I had my severance go through with the township that the township wanted a 33-foot right of way from the center line of the road over on my side. And I guess the point that I had brought up to the council at that time was I own 1.5 kilometers of the land on that road. And if I'm the only one that severs a lot off there, well, then you have 33 feet, a chunk taking out of the middle of the road. And if nobody else ever severs a lot, that It's just a chunk in the middle of the road, or off the road, I should say. But I was just concerned in the way it was brought up from the county, that this is something that is put to task on all developments or easements or land being surveyed for lots or whatever would be taking off. And I guess my concern was that the road is as wide as it'll likely ever be, and making it a 66-foot right of way and 33 feet from the center line on my half isn't really applicable on that. And I think there's roads in every ward around that some of these will never be 66 feet. So I guess my concern was that whether it can be come up to some kind of an agreement with, I know it's going against county's request, but when it's not applicable for all roads, I think it's up to the individual townships to address it. So I'm just open for comments on, and I guess the other part that was brought to my attention is that when I survey that, I survey it, so it's going to be at my cost, and then the township isn't going to give me anything for it.
Except the
Which I-
severance, right?
Which I don't think is right. When I am surveying a lot that the 144 acres plus or minus now that you're getting is less than $300 a year because it's farm. And I'm surveying a lot that is going to have a house built on it, which is likely going to have $2,500 to $3,000 tax income for you guys. And I'm kind of getting my hands slapped here for creating a lot at my cost, and you're taking property which
You'd like some money for.
well, I'm not necessarily saying money. If we can come to agreement on an entrance or whatever. Like, I'm not saying that money has to change hands. Like years ago, and I don't know whether it still goes on, years ago when the road was built, they took a corner here and rock off there, and they did that with the property as it was on my side. So, and in payment for me, they give me, 3 or 4 rolls of wire, which I was satisfied with. They didn't take a lot, but I mean, it did the fencing along the roads, and I'm just want to see what this council says or what they think's fair to me with this right of way, if it goes that way.
Okay, let me read the motion and then we'll discuss it further. The motion is by Lynn and by Susan. Whereas the Committee of Adjustment at its November the 10th, 2022 meeting approved the creation of a new lot pursuant to application B 3022 Hinchinbrook, conditional upon the standard road widening condition, which requires the landowner to transfer any road widening identified. And whereas Mr. Clow requested consideration of the Committee of Adjustment that the township compensate him for any lands taken as a result of this condition. And whereas the Committee of Adjustment does not have the authority to decide whether to provide financial relief or consideration, and Mr. Clow was directed to submit the request to council. Now, therefore, be it resolved that council receive the presentation from Mr. Clow for information, and that council defer the decision until January the 24th, 2023, to allow staff time to research potential costs and prepare a report for further consideration. So it will give staff time to put together some options and the new council to maybe even go back and see the minutes of the November 10th. Okay. Now, do you want to ask some questions now, or do you want to wait till you get the report? Craig?
Hi, Oliver. Like, what is it you want? Like, I get the impression from you, you want to keep your land and have an entrance into the place. Or am I misreading you wrong? Like you don't really,
Little of both.
you don't really care if you
If-
get $5,000 for,
Like if they take the land, which county wants the townships to do. But I mean, if it's, I guess with this road, I don't think myself, and I think if other people went for a drive and there's roads back here, like that's not real applicable for some of these side roads to have a 66-foot right of way. And I guess if it goes through that way, I would think that it should be worth something to the township. And I guess my point was that I'm severing this lot off, and which it really doesn't affect, yeah, it's a little bit of a field on the one side, but the lot that I'm severing off is going to make you guys up to 10 times much tax, but I'm not getting nothing for it. So I guess my point was that if you still go down the road that you're going to take the 33 feet from the center over, if that's what you agree on, or that's what you have to do, that's fine. But in doing that, I think it's only fair to me that I should get something in return when I'm making you guys money. And whether it's the entrance for the lot, putting in, have the township put in the culvert and the gravel to fill it, then on the other side, then I take it from there. But I don't see that if you're going to take this land, I think it should be worth something to me. And whether, as they say, if you go the route that you can't pull back and this 33-foot right away, I'll have to live with that, but I think I should get something for it. And in saying that, like I'm not here to, I don't want $5,000-$10,000 like it's not worth that. But I think when I'm making you guys money down the road, I think that you should at least put the culvert and a couple loads of gravel so I can continue into the lot.
Okay, that will be something in negotiations. Dan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Is there such things as a forest road anymore?
No,
There's no such thing, no.
no. There was for many, many years, but through the courts, I think is where it's come out that
So you
they're
have to
called
do the right of way.
heritage roads.
So you have to do the 66 feet then?
Yes.
Like one of the roads that comes to mind is Burke Settlement Road up here. Like it's just a narrow road, and I know I don't know, the last time I was in there was a couple of houses on it. But I mean, take that road as an example, to go back 66 feet. It's like, it's not really applicable for there. And I know now Old Flats Road has more traffic on it than that does, but it'll never be like a Long Lake Road or a 506 road or a 509 road. It's just going to be a hard top.
I think the thing that we have to look at is, can we make individual concessions? Because there are lots where it's more compact and it's like lot by lot, that we've done it to the guy beside him and the guy down the road. If we start exempting, what does that do to that policy? But that's what staff will come back in a report.
Okay.
They'll say, you can do this, but this is the results, or you can do this, and this is what the results. So certainly we will get a report, discuss it, and we'll let you know. Okay. Now, anyone else have any questions? Philip?
I was gonna try to see if we could expedite it, but because I figured Tyson could probably give us a rough idea of what a load of gravel on a culvert might cost, but
He'll get that. We'll get that in the
I don't
report.
want to wait until
Yeah.
the next meeting.
Oliver's not going to be doing anything before July or January 24th.
2 weeks.
Okay, all those in favor? Carried. So we will get back to you, Oliver, once we get that report. It'll come back to council next
24th.
on the 24th.
Okay,
Okay,
all right, thanks for your time.
see, we'll get you visit us by keeping you coming back. Thank you. Just to let people know, Oliver was on council for a number of years in Hinchinbrook, so he needs a reminder every now and then that this is a good job. All right, next we have a deferred item, and it is the pickleball committee. A couple of representatives, because there's many out there, come up to the table. If you want to make your presentation.
I don't think they're doing a presentation.
No?
No.
Sorry, Nikki.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I was going to speak about the motion and the ladies were going to answer any questions
Oh,
that came
okay.
up from the motion.
Okay, nobody told me that.
There.
Or if they did, I didn't remember. Okay, you go ahead, Nikki.
The pickleball committee came to us a year and a half ago or so, and what they wanted was a commitment to the property. They fixed up, in the past few years, they've fixed up the old tennis court and they've made it into pickleball courts. And they came to us wanting to upgrade it. They wanted to do the fundraising themselves. They just wanted a commitment from the township to say they could use the court so they could go out and fundraise their own money for it. So at the time the council decided to strike an ad hoc committee. I was the chair of that ad hoc committee, and we came back in November with a recommendation. We looked at different sites throughout the area, and the recommendation was the current site was the most optimum site. Second choice was to build brand new courts down on the other side of the parking lot where the staff park in front of the township office. But it was going to be much more costly to build new courts. So the motion was deferred in November to come back to this council to make a decision if we could commit to the pickleball group so that they could go out and start fundraising so that they could do upgrades on their courts this summer. So to see a deferral again, I'm all for a recreational study, but this group has been waiting for many years. They did fundraising, raised quite a few $1,000s, cleaned up all the brush, did a lot of man hours to it, to fix it up, to paint it, to seal it, to get it by so that they could use it. I don't feel that we should defer yet again for them. I think we need to make a decision and let them go and fundraise. They're not going to be applying for the same huge grants and the same flows of grants that the whole township will be applying for. They're looking at applying for grants from pickleball companies through other streams like what South Frontenac did. The one member of the committee was very helpful in South Frontenac fixing up the courts in Sunbury and Harrowsmith and Sydenham as well. So they're going to use her expertise to collect this money and fundraise. So they've done the work, they're committed to it, and they just want a commitment from us. Pickleball has exploded in the country and the world actually, and offering a pickleball site here, pickleball courts here in Sharpeville Lake is going to be advantageous for economic development. They're going to bring people in here to play pickleball. They might stop at the grocery store and pick up a loaf of bread. They might want a sandwich or a coffee or lunch or something. They might stop at the beach and have a swim. So to make them wait even longer, we have other committees that went out and did fundraising on their own without council kind of being overly involved. And that's what this committee is. They're like a grassroots group that just wants to get courts here. And it's a benefit to us as a township to support them rather than to defer it till a study can be done. And we know studies don't just happen overnight. Like these people would probably lose another whole year of upgrades on the courts if we waited for a study to be done. So I think that pretty much covers it. But if you have more questions, the ladies are more than welcome to answer it.
Okay, let's read the motion, and then if there's more questions, one of you three can answer them. Moved by Philip Smith, seconded by Lynn Clakus. Whereas the previous council received the final report from the Central Frontenac Pickleball Committee, which requested that council make a decision whether to allow the existing pickleball court to permanently remain on the former Sharpeville Lake site. And whereas council passed resolution 431/2022 that directed that any decision regarding the recommendation be brought forward to the next council. And whereas staff are proposing to undertake a recreational needs study in 2023 to provide an objective third-party analysis of our recreational needs in the township, and therefore recommend waiting for the recommendations of this report prior to making a decision on the permanent location of the facility. Now, therefore, be it resolved that council defer this matter pending the outcome of the recreational needs study report, or alternatively defer to the first available meeting following the budget approval if the recreational needs study is not approved in the 2023 budget. So if the needs study doesn't go forward, then this would be looked at in the 2023 budget. But before we go further, I just want to point out one of the issues we've had for the group going, well, since the beginning, is the site is the school, and they've redone that court and they use that court and it's great. There's many, many people here, lots of laughters in the mornings, and it's an active bunch. And we've been asked a number of times if we could give them a 5-year commitment. And I have come back to them every time to say, I can give you that 5-year commitment, but we might not be able to actually do it, which causes a problem for going for grants outside of pickleball grants. The other option was, and the seniors housing is going on that site. It has been dragged out because of a communal services system, because if that is a go, we can put more than just 5 units. We can put 30 units, as you will see when you go through that part. So if that's the case, we will do our best in design to keep the pickleball courts, because you're going to have a whole group of pickleball players living in those houses, or apartments rather. So, but nothing is known yet to give that commitment. The group have also looked at a lot down by the parking lot. There are some issues with that property, and we've received a letter from the kick and push committee group there about the issues with that site. So we really need to defer this. Again, if the pickleball people can use the court for another year till we get some direction of going forward with the seniors project. And I know I see the faces another year, but we can give you a commitment of 5 years and you can go for grants. But what happens if we build in 4 years? I don't know where that leaves you. Yes.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I guess one of the challenges that we face is we feel like we're chasing a moving target. When we improved the court and took what was a community eyesore that had been left idle for 30 years and a whole generation missed a chance to play any sport on that court, it was disappointing to say the least, but we rolled up our sleeves as a group and turned an eyesore into a community hub and a real boon to the community, I think. And at the time, there was a community study done that looked at 3 areas in town. And one of the things that was being considered at that time in that feasibility study was either 5 or 10 units. And in either case, the pickleball court could have stayed where it was and not have interfered with that type of a housing development. Subsequent to that, and many of us paid attention to all of the communal use presentations here and all of those things were being considered. And in the most recent one that we saw, it was clear that a 45-unit building could be built on the hill and that area could remain as a court, a recreational court. It was only in the second option that had a 15-unit building and a 35-unit building that space was required for housing. That was clear in all the presentations that we saw. So our thinking, when we hit the point of that feasibility study being made public and council having had a chance to review it, is that the hurdle was gone. Council could still easily have a 45-unit dwelling on the top of that hill and retain a recreational area at the same time. That's what the consultants came in and said was feasible. So we thought that was the political hurdle that was stopping us from getting any longer term commitment to going ahead to improving the court. We thought we were past that hurdle. So I guess that's the frustration. I think the second frustration, if now we're subject to a study being done by an independent third party, again, studies raise all kinds of questions. When we have 4 rec committees in this community and a slew of volunteers in each of those 4 wards who know what those needs are already and who know what they'd like to see in their communities, I'm not sure the value of having an outsider come in to study all that and tell us what they think we might want, when the people who live in this community actually know what we need and want. And we'd all be very happy to be consulted in some sort of endeavor. And I'm not speaking formally for any rec committees, but my sense is that all the people involved in recreation and the people who want to support those things in these communities want nothing more than to get a chance to have their voice heard. I don't think anyone's asking for a third-party study that's going to slow down the things they've already got in the works. So if there's now a hurdle that you might still want to put more housing on the lower area when you can still put 45 on the hill, and we need to wait another year or two for a study to be done. Grant proposals, it's going to take a whole lot of rolling up sleeves and working to try and track down the money. But we can't do any of that if we don't know that there's some reasonable timeline. Because even in good conscience, if someone was going to give us a bunch of money and it was just going to be wasted in 3 years, I'm not going to waste anybody's money like that. That's just not the right thing to do. So we're looking to know that we can improve the court that's there and have it there for some reasonable length of time so that the next generation maybe gets a place to play that the last generation didn't. We just frankly think it's not a lot to ask when the volunteers have done all the work to make what's happened so far happen, and they're willing to do the work to make it better.
Let me just go back and answer one of your questions about thinking that it was done when you saw that those pictures and blocks moved around. Until an engineer actually goes in on that site and looks at where everything has to go. And as I say, we will try our best to make sure it stays there. But I don't know what the engineer is going to say about where the buildings will go, where the systems, the communal service will go, and how all that's going to happen. So I can't give you a firm confirmation that those pictures they showed us is what it will be. So that's why we can't say definitely that, oh yeah, that's going to stay there. Maybe if we bought the house next door and knocked it down, you could pull the court that way, but there's no definite answer that we can give you on where the courts are going to go in relationship to the seniors housing. Craig?
Yeah, as a representative of also where it is, I've heard a lot about this. I think it's about time as a group, maybe we put some common sense into this. They're looking for $80,000 to build a court. And let me finish. Okay, let's start this all over. You're looking for an agreement from the township to apply for grants up to around $80,000. If the township budgeted $80,000 for a pickleball court, you don't need an agreement. Right? You don't need agreement. And now we're hypothetically dreaming that somebody's coming in and building 45 homes on the top of the rock pile. And we're going to sell this to them. So I'm going to come and invest $100 million into this piece of property. I could probably come up with $80,000 to pay back the pickleball court. So we should look at another option. Like last month or last meeting, we approved a truck for Tyson. There's another truck on this meeting. There'll be trucks all throughout the year that we approved to buy. And we got this whole group of people here every other month begging for $80,000. So why can't we?
We don't have $80,000.
But they're not asking for
But we
$80,000.
haven't did the budget.
Pardon?
We haven't did the budget though.
No,
That's, I
Yeah.
mean, can we add that?
wait till the 31st and we come to the end and the percentage increase, then you tell me if we have 80,000.
The other challenge though is with seniors housing. I mean, the 45 unit or whatever. I mean, my understanding was that that's what the site could accommodate. Have we even studied what the need is or anything like that? So
No, but that's why,
right, which is why I'm struggling to understand why we cannot accommodate the request.
of
for the
5
pickleball
years.
court. Because
Like realistically, if you think that like how many years, if even the development goes, how many years is it gonna take? Realistically, like, come on, like it's gonna take quite a few years.
If you're prepared to risk that, we're prepared to give you a 5-year commitment. But in 4 years, if there is houses to be built, they will be built and you will be short 1 year. That's exactly where we're at.
Well, so I guess the question then is if you give us a 5-year commitment and we go ahead and get grants and we improve the court, that's great. If in 4 years, the township is considering some other use for the site that would impede on that, that would be a decision for council at that time regardless.
Yes.
So I guess that debate could be had if and when necessary.
But we have to look after our seniors sooner or later. We've got people moving out of our area because they have no place to live here. And they're
I-
living in big houses.
And I'll just say, not everybody who plays pickleball is exclusively seniors, but I think we have done more at that pickleball court for seniors' health and fitness and mental health and fitness and community building than I thought possible.
For a number of people, I agree with you totally. Susan.
Madam Mayor, if I could just comment. So when I was running for council, I had the pleasure of going to the pickleball tournament. And you know, I was shaking people's hands that I didn't know. And guess what? They were all from away. They couldn't vote for me, but they were enjoying pickleball. We do attract people to this community. They are going to spend money in this community. The Cardinal benefited all sorts of things. So yes, seniors were playing, but there were young people playing too. They were younger than me. So, you know,
That's young. Well, again, we've had this discussion many times. Okay, I've got 2 over here. Who was first? Philip was first.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One, as Susan has indicated, the court is very well used. I got roped into playing a couple of games on Canada today. And when you do drive by, you see tons of people around, always somebody there. So I, with them, I don't understand why we're tying it to the recreational needs study. It's already established. So they just want to find a home. So how do we, you've already addressed the crux of the issue is the seniors housing project. So how do we either make a decision that we want to give them this home or tell them no, and put it to rest, I guess. Because I mean, the motion we have in front of us is to wait on a study, which I don't think is relevant.
Well, we can defer it. This was in order to include it in the recreation study. Does it have to be? We will choose what goes in that recreation.
Why does it have to be included in recreation study? We know it's warranted.
Yeah.
We want it. We need it. It's there. It's used. It has nothing to do with any other recreation group because
But
we are
you-
not impeding on any other recreation group or any
But
like,
you are part of the recreation committee.
well, do we
Then-
need to remove ourselves from the rec committee? I don't
But-
want, we don't want to, but why is it necessary when we're not?
Because it's recreation.
Yeah, but we're not asking, we're not taking money away from any other district. We're not asking for,
Once you get grants, when you apply for grants, you affect 4.
we are not going to apply for any grants through the township. We can apply for grants through a pickleball club.
So you don't need the 5-year commitment then.
Yes, we do.
Because to apply for, well, to apply for the grant, we need to say that we can use that property for at least 5 years. It's not, we don't have to actually ask, we actually don't have to use, your I know you're allowed very few grants for recreation per year, or whatever it is. We don't want to take away from other recreation, other districts. We're just wanting, we can apply for, and it's my understanding we can apply for other grants as long as we have the commitment from the township that that we can use that property for X amount of years.
What we can do with this motion is when we'll defer it one more month, and we will take you out of the recreational study.
May I just have a question then? If I don't understand why a referral would be necessary if the recreation study is not specifically looking at the needs of pickleball.
From here.
I don't know if this recreation study is something that the rec committees have requested or not.
No, it's something we are looking at because of the cost of recreation. When you look at what the township's paying for recreation, and we'll see it in our budgets when the forms come, I think there's stuff coming out later this week, maybe. But again, we have to look at the cost when it comes to the budget. But the issue for us has been that property and a commitment of 5 years that we've told you we can't make. Or we can make it, but we may have to break it.
Well, I think on behalf of the group, we would like you to make the commitment. And if something changes down the road, that will be a discussion we'll have with the council in place at the time.
Defer this motion and do a new one on the 24th.
So we would just like you to say, yes, give us the 5 years, give us whatever you're able to give us. If an issue arises 4 years from now and council of the day thinks it makes sense to tear it up, we'll probably come and say, we prefer you not. But if the council of the day says, great, we'll keep it and build housing beside it, we'll say, wonderful.
Okay, first of all, we're going to have to speak to a lawyer about that before we do it. Because if we're giving you something of a commitment, it needs to be a legal commitment. Otherwise, it's putting us and you in trouble. That won't take that long. What we'll do is we'll defer this until next meeting,
24th.
January 24th. It will give folks time to do some research about what we can do legally to give the commitment. And again, I'm all for giving you the commitment. I'm just worried that that commitment may have to be broken.
That's what we have to put in.
So
To do it that.
I don't want to get any of us in trouble. Yes.
Could we not write up an agreement on a 5-year land lease agreement with, if a development takes place within that 5 years, the pickleball group agrees the removal of their pickleball court, and this agreement will be pending legal approval and will be reported back to the pickleball group on January 24th if it was approved. So they'll leave here today knowing that they have the agreement, they're just pending on legal advice.
Yeah. Yeah.
But could we pass that as a motion here today?
Well, let's.
Because it's still pending legal approval.
Okay, what we can do is we can change this motion if the movers and seconders agree, simply to say, pending the outcome of the recreational needs study report, or alternatively, take that out.
Do the recreation study. There you go.
Report and to defer until January 24th, 2023.
To provide for more details, to more information.
Okay. So that gives Kathy a couple of weeks to find out what we can, the wording of a lease and what position we're in. Okay. So we've changed this to say, now therefore be it resolved that council defer the matter pending the outcome. No, we have to take that out.
Right out. Just matter. Yeah. defer this matter, take the pending of just to January 24th. And then to get further information in
Yes.
regards to. a lease.
Okay, so it's going to say, now therefore be it resolved that council defer this matter to January 24th, 2023 meeting
Yeah, and then we can provide,
instead of the study. We took that part out.
and we'll get the lease and stuff.
So that will give us time to come back. Philip,
Sorry, we're talking about a lease, but as long as they stay under the rec committee itself as either a subcommittee or part of the rec committee, they're at least then still protected by insurance and all that good
That's
stuff
what I
that the
wanna
rec
find out.
committee covers them from. So unless you're saying you want to be your own separate thing,
We're not looking to create an organization that signs a lease. We
No.
just
sorry,
want.
it's not a lease, an agreement, an agreement. An
Well, we're not
agreement-
okay, but we're not a constituted body to sign that agreement with you. What we really want is for the township to commit that that space could be used for pickleball courts for a period of time. Then leave us to do the homework to try and chase down the fundraising, the grants and so on.
so I think our legal question is more what happens if we have to back out of
Yes.
commitment after
Yes,
3 or
Well,
4
you
years?
haven't signed an agreement with any entity. We're not.
but
a
we are
body with
we are
whom you've signed
giving
An agreement.
we are giving you permission
To use the-
with the knowledge that we may not be able to fulfill it, which is not right to do.
Well, I think you've read it into the record. I think that would be part of the official record and,
Well, let's see what the lawyer says.
well, fair enough.
Okay? So the motion now reads that we're just going to defer this matter until January 24th, 2023. So next meeting, 2 weeks. Okay. Oh, sorry, Lynn.
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor. I have one question. In the research you've done on the grant that you're looking at where you need a 5-year commitment, do you know what would happen if it was only 4 years? What would happen to the grant?
I don't want to give you the impression we have done a ton of research into this because there was no point in doing too much work until we knew we could have a home for pickleball for some reasonable period of time. The reason the 5-year thing came up is with another group I'm involved with that uses township property for something. They applied for a Trillium grant and they needed a letter from the township saying that that would be a continued use for 5 years at the time they either made application or when they received the grant, to know for sure that, yes, we're not just giving you a grant and then, you know, whatever we're building with it or doing with it, it's gone a year from now. So the grants may all have very different terms and conditions, and we haven't done a lot of research. But we, in good conscience, wouldn't want to have some group give us, oh, here's $25,000 and then tear it up 2 years later, regardless of what their own requirements might be, right? So we're just trying to be practical.
And see, we're doing the same thing. We don't want to say yes and then have to say no.
Trillium requires 5 years. That one we know about for sure
Yeah.
from previous experience.
Right. Okay.
But currently there's not a Trillium grant open that is for capital projects. So you technically might not be applying for Trillium. You're looking at going a more private grant route.
So you don't need it or you still need it? Yes.
But despite where we get the money from, and how it's developed, we would, you know, we don't want to throw away $80,000.
Yeah.
And then have it stripped out next year.
And the work that you're going to be doing
That all of it.
to use it. Yeah.
That's the thing, and you know, I don't know, I understand the development and all that stuff, but realistically, yeah, why can't it? Like,
Oh, I think it will. As I say, we'll do the best to try and keep it there. When the engineers start laying out their plans, we're going to be saying now, develop it around the court.
when is
court.
that?
Well, we got
Oh,
municipal world is not the fastest. We
right.
have to get some commitment on communal services to be able to know what we can build. That's the first step. So that should be happening this year.
We've also had advice around how to do construction for pickleball, and it's quite likely that if we were fortunate enough to apply and receive some grants, You know, it might be that the destruction end happens at the end of the season next year and the construction phase of it starts in the spring, the following. So that you don't end up taking the court out of commission for
Yeah.
6 to 8 weeks in the middle of season. So there's a lot of things in the air. All we know is the one thing that matters first is, can it be here? That's the question we need answered before we can do anything else.
Okay. Let's vote on this motion. So it's deferred to the 24th. All those in favor? Okay, motion's carried. So
But I'd just like to say that I am in favor of the pickleball.
we all are.
So
I can't play it, but I'm in favor of it. Okay, I'm going to suggest we have just a 10-minute break.
Madam Mayor,
There's coffee out there and
just before we break, can Kathy or Cindy, the study that kind of shows the layout for the seniors complex and the communal systems, can that be forwarded to all of council so the new councilors are aware of what?
yes,
Yes, we
actually,
can do that
Joe,
in time for the.
Joe is
Well,
doing
ahead
it.
of the next meeting, because if we're going to make a decision, they should know what.
The other concern is, which they don't understand, if they're under the recreation committee, what happens if somebody gets hurt over there? It's on our property. So that's the legal stuff that we gotta make sure we're covered on. Because if somebody breaks the law, they're not part of the recreation committee.
As long as they Okay, folks, we've got lots of work yet to do. It's only Mr. Meeks I have to get to hear me. Oh, and Bill. Okay, let's get back to the table, folks. There, I hear Mr. Everett. Oh, there he is. Okay. Okay. Break is over. We are going to start with our staff reports. We have a lot of work yet to do, and I'm sorry, all of those presenters went a little long, and in future, I'll try to enforce the 10-minute rule, but there was a lot to learn from everyone. All right, Development Services, Andy, you're on. I will read the motion. Moved by Lynn and seconded by Susan that council received the construction details report December 2022 for information. Any questions or comments on that report? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? Carried. Anything you'd like to point out, Andy? I see our numbers are a little bit down from last year, but not much.
Andy and Mike.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that would be the only thing I was going to point out is it's down a little bit, but the workload's still there. A lot of the permits that were issued in even in 2021 haven't been closed yet. So
Okay.
work's
All
ongoing.
right. Next is motion moved by Philip Smith, seconded by Cindy Kelsey. Whereas the Building Code Act provides that two or more principal authorities may enter into an agreement providing reviews of plans. And whereas the council of each municipality shall appoint such inspectors as are necessary for the enforcement of this act in the areas in which the municipality has jurisdiction. And whereas the town of Perth can provide building permit and inspection services to a maximum of 15 hours per week. Now therefore be it resolved that council approve the recommendation of the CBO and authorize the mayor and clerk to execute the agreements. Discussion? Nikki?
Thank you, to you, Madam Mayor. So just a
Pull
question.
your microphone up closer.
Clarity, is this going to replace and help Andy out and we not replace a second building inspector that we approved last year?
Andy?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Gowdy. Yes, I was going to, we were unsuccessful retaining a building inspector last year, so this was another option to fill that gap if needed. Perth hired an inspector about right around the same time that we were looking, and with interest rates going up, their workload isn't as high as they anticipated, so they offered to help out. So I think it's a good idea to get the agreement in place so that option's there to use it if needed.
So it's on a on-call situation.
That's correct.
Okay. Lynn?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I noticed that the hourly rate that you're talking about is $69.36. Is this comparable to what would be in our township as well, or?
I would say it's a reasonable rate.
That would include travel?
Travel would be on top of that, but the main thing that they were offering is more of a plans review service. So I could email the plans to Perth. Say if we got an application for a mixed use building or something that I don't have a lot of experience with, then I could just send those plans to Perth. they've got all kinds of mixed use buildings there, so they've got more experience with those types of buildings is the main reason I was looking forward.
Good, good. Dan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, the agreement with Tay Valley, North Frontenac and Allen, do we still have that, Andy, or
Yes, that's correct.
we still do have that, so we
Yeah.
can still rely on them as well?
Yep.
Does Perth do septics too, or?
No, part eight's not part of this. Part eight being the septic part of the building code.
And if we need help, it would probably be like Allen on the forefront compared to Perth instead of paying them an hourly wage to drive up here.
Yes, Alan would be my first choice, especially for inspections and that. His rate is a little better than Perth's. And he's a little closer as well.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Susan?
Well, actually, Dan asked most of my questions because I was wondering about the rate. Now, once you get one inspector involved on a particular application, did they stay seized of it, or could it go to another inspector if issues arise, or?
Yeah, with the plans review, it would mainly be determining if the plans met the Ontario Building Code. And they would provide a detailed review of what they felt did and didn't meet the code. And then that would transfer to me to do the inspections, and I would have that review to follow.
And I'm gathering that the volumes are just so high that we need to look for someone else to assist, since we were unsuccessful last year in recruiting an inspector. Are we thinking that we should be trying again?
I was more or less looking for this option. I thought it might be a better fit than hiring another full-time employee, and with interest rates up, maybe we
And to see how the
might not be
market
as
goes.
busy this year.
With interest rates.
And Auntie, what's the typical time of a large house looking at the plans?
For a single detached dwelling, about an hour of reviewing the plans. But when you get into large buildings and they get a lot more complex, and you could be spending a full day going over a multi-unit building.
And that's if you're uninterrupted.
Correct. Which it doesn't happen that often.
So one further question, I noted that essentially it's revenue neutral because the permits will.
Susan, talk into your
Oh,
microphone.
I'm sorry. It's essentially revenue neutral because it will cover the hourly rate. Does that also take into account the disbursements such as travel expenses and so forth? Will that, is that all included in that revenue neutral, or some on top of that?
It should. Just trying to think how we made out the last few years. I'd have to talk with Michael there to see how last year made out, but I believe we've had a surplus at least the last 3 years that in the past, there may not have been, we may not have broke even, but I know the last 3 years, I'm pretty sure that we've come out ahead. But they do recommend having 2 years' wages in reserve.
And just to add to that, Susan, the money that comes in from building permits cannot be used in any other department. So it sits in a reserve for years when we need to have extra help.
Well,
Okay. Any other questions? One more, Dan?
Andy, are we committed to that 15 hours a week, or is that just if we need them or not?
that's
type thing?
all they're willing to commit to, but there's no obligation to fill that 15 hours.
And Tay Valley and North Frontenac, is that the same? situation too as well, or?
With them, it's just an on-call.
I see. Thank you.
You also trade off each other's vacations
Correct.
and there's no charge for that.
It's, we just, if I have to go to North Frontenac, they get billed my hourly rate. And if Don was to come to Central Frontenac, he's billed out at North's hourly rate. There's no, we don't make any money either way. It's just
Okay,
cost recovery.
good to have that backup. Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Carried. And next, we have appointment of building inspectors, moved by Philip Smith, seconded by Lynn Clegus. Whereas the Building Code Act provides that the municipality can appoint building inspectors in addition to its chief building official for the purpose of providing inspection services as required under said act. And whereas the township's previous appointment bylaws need to be updated to reflect current staff and qualified inspectors. Now, therefore, be it resolved that council receive this report for information and consider passing the said bylaw later in the meeting. Discussion. So those are all the names listed there that can do the job. Okay, all those in favor? Carried.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Okay, we are now at roads. Activity report, moved by Lynn, seconded by Craig, that council receive the Public Works activity report as prepared by the Public Works Manager dated January 10th, 2023 for information. Any questions for Tyson? Nikki?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At our last meeting, Tyson, we talked about shifting of hours during weather events, and I was just wondering if you could update us on how that's being implemented and going.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Gowdy, we haven't had to shift many hours so far with the time frame of the winter events. Any time off, like if they came in on the weekend, they were still required throughout the week as well to get plows fixed and ready and cleaned and all that in between storm work that has to be completed. So we haven't had to do that yet.
Okay. I'm sorry, I think you misunderstood. So when we were talking about shifting hours, it was looking at weather coming and changing the staff's hours according to when the weather is arriving so that they are on the ground during the storm, not waiting. So for example, if a storm's coming, you see that weather's going to hit at 4 o'clock, your staff's done at 4:30, they've been in for their day, and then they have to go home and have their 8-hour reset. That's what we were talking about at the time.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Gowdy, sorry about that. I did misunderstand your question. We do our best to deploy crews. Every winter event's different. We have been fairly successful on getting the people to work and buses to school on time. We haven't had many complaints about crews not being deployed soon enough. We get actually more that seems to come in as like, why are you out doing this when you don't need to? It's a balancing act, and I think we're doing all right at it at the time.
Okay. Any other questions or comments, Philip?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tyson, we spoke during break, but just maybe to make it part of
A little louder, Philip.
I was mentioning about the mill in Parham that has fallen into the creek and what potential issues could happen with it if it continues further downstream and potentially blocks the culvert on 38 with increased water flows.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Smith, excellent point brought up. First thing I'd like to do is be able to research this a little bit at the staff level before we have too much public discussion. And something that's important to me is maybe reaching out to that property owner before we have too much public discussion. So that's something that as long as Madam Mayor can authorize, we can definitely spend some time researching that.
And then bring it back maybe as soon as you have a report.
We can bring it back to the next Public Works report.
Okay,
Yeah.
if you can get the owner.
Yeah, or anything. I can provide any kind of an update. It's an excellent point, and it could, with the amount of water that travels, I believe, from Long Lake down to Bob's Lake. That's a pile of water. It's definitely a risk. So it's an excellent point, and we'll follow up.
Good. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the motion? Carried.
Thank you, Council. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You only have one item and you're out of here. Thanks, Tyson.
Thank you.
Okay, administration.
No fire.
Sorry, I'm going to the wrong spot here. All right,
Chief's been waiting.
I'm going to read the motion and then we'll discuss it. Moved by Bill and seconded by Philip. Whereas the 2008 GMC half-ton pickup truck is scheduled for replacement in the fire and emergency services fleet. And whereas it has been difficult to obtain bids with RFQs, and it was determined that a sufficient vehicle could be sourced due to difficulty during procuring new vehicles because of the lack of supplier interest. And whereas the procurement policy allows non-competitive contracting and states it may be justified when the required item is in short supply due to the market conditions, or when competitive sourcing for low value procurement would be uneconomical or would not attract bids. Now therefore be it resolved that council approve the recommendation of the manager of fire and emergency services, fire chief, to proceed with the purchase the 2020 Ford F-250 four-wheel drive, 3/4 ton truck in the amount of $72,900 with an additional $20,000 for emergency equipment, which is scheduled to be which is included in the proposed 2023 budget. And further, that the manager of emergency service be authorized to issue a purchase order for the truck. Okay, discussion. Nikki.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chief, you had leftover money in the reserve from the purchase of your vehicle. Could that money be used to offset some of this? I have a few questions. Okay, is for the equipment part, is there any money left over in your current budget that could be allocated to this? And is this 2008 going to be declared surplus? Could we use any of the money from that to offset it? And whatever became of the truck that was the mechanic had and the deer ran out and it was at the repair shop for months down in Verona, is it back in service? Because I don't recall seeing it on our tour. So again, maybe if it isn't in service, can that money be used so we're not taking from our new budget?
A lot of questions. You know how old I am, right? Okay. All right. So to start with the leftover money from the fleet. Yes, I believe so. Michael has some of that in the reserve. Our finance director. The truck that was hit the deer is back in service in Arden. That was I pointed out at the tour. We had that done. As far as the equipment goes will there be money left over in the budget? I can't say that yet because Michael is still working on the budget, the finance director. I know I'm putting the cart before the horse with the budget, but this vehicle came available and it's an 8-foot box as opposed to the shorter box, which we need. And the vehicle that's in at the Sharp Lake station right now is in pretty dire condition. So what we're intending to do is to copy what we've got with the rest of the fleet for the utility vehicle. So there's a cap and then there's a compartment where we pull out for the equipment so we can protect what the stuff and what equipment is inside. So the dry suits for ice water rescue and so on and so forth. they're loading it in the back of the pickup right now and it's exposed to the elements if they're parked at an incident. And so this is part of the problem. So given the vehicle, the age of it, 2020 for the price, it had 80,000 kilometers. I can see this vehicle lasting 15 years, probably 12 years anyways. So I missed one question, I think. No.
I'm sorry. You will declare the 2008 surplus, probably won't get a lot for it, but you probably, will you be
Yes.
putting it towards it?
Yes, I will do that, yes.
Okay. Philip?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So you answered one of the questions, because I didn't see in the report the kilometers for the vehicle. And just, sorry, is it in there? Because I didn't see it.
No, I don't think it is either, actually. Sorry, it is
And
80,000.
where are you purchasing it from? Because I don't think that was indicated either. And I also wanted to just point out that you said it was difficult to get quotes, but did you actually receive quotes that could have been included in the report?
No, I did not. I've been looking for quite a while to do some research, and I've been making some calls on vehicles throughout the province, far away as Bancroft. But I have not been able to find something that would suit us for what our purpose is. We needed a 3/4 ton with the long box. It's very difficult to get them. To purchase new is a considerably more money, and this is coming from a dealership, this vehicle.
Kathy was just mentioning that some areas, go ahead, Kathy.
Okay, some of the areas, and the chief was mentioning to me, so if council certainly, they're not even going with RFQs any longer for fire vehicles because they cannot get them. And the wait is so long. So, I mean, we're going to be in, a dilemma, I think, in a lot of areas in acquiring vehicles. So, I mean, if you can't put any RFQs out, you're not going to get the best deal. So I think the next approach of what the chief has done is to start searching and going other places. And I think Public Works is going to be in the same situation. So therefore, we're going to have to go on a bigger search to find any vehicles that might work for us.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So as I said in the previous meeting, I guess that I'm trying to go outside the box. Only to save money for the municipality, but also to get something that's going to last as well. I mean, I want to make sure that we're going to have something that's going to be adequate to do the job. But also, it's going to save some money in the long run. Kathy, the CAO McMahon is right. I was as recent today speaking to a company that manufactures fire trucks, the pumpers and tankers in Ottawa, and they're not even taking bids or looking at bids for municipalities. You want a truck? Here's the price. That's what it is. You want it? There it is. So that's what's going on right now. So.
Okay, Philip.
So just from my own personal experience, between Christmas and New Year's, we did go to Kelladar and get a 250 quoted, and it was 80,000. It wasn't 8-foot box, but I mean, it was a 4x4 4-door truck for $80,000, 2023. So I mean, it was a delivery expected in April. So just saying that there is abilities to get quotes and gets vehicles. So for myself, I would like to see that kind of approach when we're looking at these numbers. And just while I have the mic, I'd like to ask for a recorded vote on this.
Okay. Bill.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One question, 2-wheel or 4-wheel drive?
4-wheel drive diesel.
Thank you.
Yeah, but for sure.
Craig.
What's our RFQ process say we have to follow now? Is there any amendments to it that there's special things for fire or public works?
Well, it does say if there is a short supply due to market conditions, or when competitive sourcing for low value procurement would be uneconomical or would not attract bids. So 2 of those things.
But we really don't have proof of those 2 things because we haven't asked. And we don't have any other pricing really. Like could another dealership come back to us and say, you didn't follow your township bylaws?
Well, we're following the bylaw, but we didn't do an RFQ.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. But I think the two reasons in there, short supply and not attracting bids has been happening.
But that's
Tyson?
what I'm saying, though. We haven't tried to attract any bids.
Oh,
And Philip's case could maybe say, I could have got you a truck in 4 months. Is that a real short? I'm just saying, I just don't want to see us get ourselves in trouble.
right.
That somebody else comes back and says, you didn't buy a truck from us.
Yeah.
You never
we
gave
have-
us the opportunity. I know you did your own like what I'm saying. I just want to make sure we don't get in a pickle. That's all.
Yeah. The only problem is if we go to an RFQ now, we'll lose probably this one but there will be more, I'm sure. Nikki, or no,
Thank you. Thank you,
Go
Madam Mayor. One quick question. Can this truck wait till January 31st? We've got budget deliberations on the 19th and the 31st. And we're spending money that we haven't agreed to spend yet. So could it wait?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Councillor Gowdy. Actually, I got a call from the dealership today. They wondered what decision was made. They didn't realize it was tonight. So I guess it's, it's probably going to be gone. I mean, vehicles right now are just, and especially pickup trucks or commercial trucks, it just seems to be very difficult right now. And I don't disagree with Councillor Smith. You could probably put an order in for a long box. It'll be very difficult, it'll be a lot more money. And with the diesel, it'll be a lot more. They're roughly over 100,000.
so why don't we do an RFQ? Because it sounds like people would like to see that and see what it comes in at. Cindy,
Well, I would like to see how much we have left in the budget. Because are we approving $93,000 or are we approving maybe 50,000 if he has extra left in his budget? We don't really know that. So it would be kind of nice to know exactly what we're working with.
well, by the time he gets his RFQ ready, sent out and back, we'll have the budget to know whether it's a surplus or a deficit. Yeah, sure. Usually fire is not in a surplus situation.
We do our best.
Danny?
Chris, depending where you buy it, do they set it up for you like the back, like you mentioned another 20 some thousand, or is that up to us to do it? No matter where we buy it?
Yes, so in this case, with the utility, we would purchase the vehicle and then it would go out to get the equipment installed in it. So the lights and so on, and then the cap and all the equipment that goes in the back.
So we do that all ourselves then type thing. Yeah.
No.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. We've been asked to do a recorded vote. So I'm going to start with Cindy Kelsey. Okay, you're voting on, now therefore be it resolved that council approve the recommendation to proceed with the purchase of a 2020 Ford F-250 truck in the amount of 72,900 with an additional 20,000 for emergency equipment, which is included in the 2023 budget. So you're voting on spending 72,900.
I thought, Madam Mayor, we had a discussion that we were gonna send out an RFP.
Well, if we've got to deal with the motion that's in front of it.
Okay, sorry.
And if it's no, then he's going to do that FQ thing. Okay, who's first? Cindy. All right, no. Okay, Craig. Philip. Lynn. Bill. Okay, Nikki. Susan. Danny. Say no. I'll say yes, simply because I don't think we're going to buy much for 72,900. Motion is defeated. So Chris, you got some RFQing to do.
Not a problem.
All right.
Appreciate that, council. Thank you.
Okay.
It was a suggestion, so
Yeah.
I'll let them know now.
All right.
Yes, so our fire master plan is being finalized probably the next couple of weeks to be presented to council along with the community risk assessment. I know you've already seen that, but the two will tie in together nicely. So I figured it'll be a couple hours. So the mayor's kindly offering lunch. So,
Sure. It's
Um,
early in the budget.
yes, so I didn't know if that's when the time frame would work for everybody. It's up
What,
to you.
what was the date, Chris?
22nd of February. Yeah.
So timing, you're thinking,
If you want over lunch, I'll have lunch and then. have
Do
the
it after
meeting,
lunch or we can do it before. It's whatever everybody
or to-
wants.
4 to
now,
6.
this is close to the public,
It's open to the public. Yeah.
but it would save doing it 2 hours at a regular meeting.
Yeah, but I'm
Yeah.
just, it'd be a bit long for you.
That's why we're doing this as a special meeting.
On the 24th,
Sec-
22nd of February.
22nd.
Yeah, any time in the
Yes.
day.
Okay, who is okay to do it, say from 10 until 2?
No, that's what he said.
No.
There's a no over there. Okay.
Okay, any other no's? You're a no. 2 no's? You're a no. Okay,
I'm getting a lot of those today.
You can go to 4. 4 till, we can do it from 4 till 6. Okay, well, there's noon till.
Right.
Noon till.
yeah,
2.
how about noon till 2? Not noon, Cindy
Yeah.
can't.
Or 4 to 6.
Okay, so it would be a special meeting. It's a special meeting anyway, but so 4 to 6 or 7 is better for folks? Okay. That's why we wanted to give you the 2 options.
February
Yeah.
22nd
February 22nd.
at 4 p.m. then.
4 o'clock.
4 o'clock.
Okay, I'll let Terry know.
All right.
Okay.
You're not gonna get your lunch. No, you
No.
just get cookies.
There, we saved money right there.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Good.
Thank
Thanks,
you very
Chris.
much.
All right, administration, cemetery fee report. Moved by Craig, seconded by Susan, whereas council passed resolution 492, 2022 on December 13th, 2022, which directed staff to bring back any bylaw referencing an automatic increase by consumer price index in order to consider adjusting the CPI rate to the same rate as approved by the cost of living increase applied to salaries. Said rate capped at 3.25% for the year 2023. And whereas bylaw 2020-08 sets out in Schedule B fees that are indexed by the CPI each year. Now therefore be it resolved that council receive for information this report and draft bylaw, which amends the cemetery bylaw fee schedule to incorporate the new rates for 2023 based on 3.5% increase as outlined in Schedule B of the bylaw, and that council consider passing the draft bylaw later in the meeting. Any discussion?
Just that we capped it instead of 6%.
Yes, all in favor? Motion's carried. All right. Election accessibility report. Moved by Bill and seconded by Dan, that council received and approved the post-election accessibility report as prepared by the deputy clerk to meet the mandatory requirement under the Municipal Elections Act, and further that the report be posted on the township's website. Any discussion? That's something that you typically have to do every year. Philip.
So I know this really doesn't have to do with accessibility, but the voters list was such a terrible mess that a lot of people that should have been on the voters list didn't actually even vote because it was going to be cumbersome for them to take paperwork and stuff to municipal office to get enumerated. I think it's the correct word, but
Yeah.
So I don't know how we go about ensuring for the next election that there's a better process for the voters list, because there's, from the examples I have, there's people that were on the list that literally just moved to the municipality and people that have lived here their entire lives that were not on the list.
Yes. Yeah, I think we need to let Impact know that we don't think they did a very good job in our municipality, and that we should be fighting to get enumeration back, because that's the only way to have an accurate list.
Okay, the one thing I'll mention is that it is coming out that MPAC will not be doing the election, for the voters list. It's going to be one voters list. That's going to be for the federal election and the provincial as well as the municipal. That's what they're proposing to do. So who's taking the lead of it? I don't know yet. Do you know, Cindy? If you remember? No. I think it's Elections Ontario, but that's what's going to be. They're going to go to one. So how that process, I think we just have to wait and see. I haven't, like, they'll tell us closer as we get to some of the
So
elections.
are they actually going to enumerate the
I don't know.
areas or
Have no
just
idea yet.
take the list that the province has, which is even worse?
We don't know. We have no idea.
Put your mic on, Lynn.
When a federal election or a provincial election come along, the lists will get updated with those. And so it should make for a better list because we only go every 4 years. They go on a different schedule. So if it's one list, it'll constantly get it updated.
Maybe.
You hope.
Sorry, and I just want to comment, for as bad as it was, staff was really good at helping try to make sure people got added to the list. So I don't want you to think that staff weren't helping. Trying to get people on the list as easily as they possibly could, but it was frustrating, the number of errors that there were.
It was. Dan, did you have your hand up?
Yes, could we not go by the tax bill? Everybody seems to get a tax bill. Could we not just go by the tax bill for people that are voting?
It's all done. Tax bill is a separate thing under the assessment and to do with the Assessment Act, where the other is under MPAC. They can't seem to get the two because what they do is could be people that are deceased. And so then they make sure that's updated, but that was MPAC. So, but like I said, they're not going to be doing the list. So we're just going to have to stay tuned and hopefully hope for the best of this next Elections Ontario to take over.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Carried. Is anybody else cold?
It is cold in here. Yeah.
My hands are actually shaking.
Yeah.
You're sitting on the wrong side.
We're just about done soon, but
Not soon enough.
yeah.
Moved by Bill, seconded by Dan, that council receive for information the minutes from the District 1 Recreation Committee meetings held November 21st, 2022 and December 12th, 2022. And does the representative of District 1 want to say anything about their minutes?
Yes, in a brief summary, most of our talk was about the ice rink. And as of last night, our ice rink is now officially open and skatable. I went for a skate on it last night. And in quick summary, our meeting in December, we formed a subcommittee to start planning how to go about our ice or the shack that we use for a change room and where the pump is or the well is for the ice. It was built in the 70s and we want to have a plan for rebuilding or updating that building. So we've formed a subcommittee to start working on making plans for that for the future. And we submitted our schedule of events as we know it right now to Chris Nelson to put into our calendar that on the website.
Did you work on your budget?
No.
Or council? My fear is having our January meetings, we won't have the budgets from the rec committees. So they may have to have another meeting this month so they can get those budgets together. Because the argument has always been, well, you know, we requested it, but it may not have come in time. So just letting everybody know to make sure your budgets get in.
Okay.
Okay, good. All those in favor? Carried. We're going to try to do this each time, just so if there's something really important that the committee is dealing with, you can bring it forward in case we didn't catch it when we read the minutes. So moved by Dan, seconded by Bill, that council receive for information the minutes from District 3 Committee meeting held October 15th, 2022. District 3,
That's Craig.
Craig. I hate the districts. I can never figure out the numbers. Anyway, Craig.
Yeah, just a little update, same as Lynn was saying, lots of talk about our rink. It's up and running now too. We're gonna have the canteen open there this weekend and hopefully every weekend coming up throughout the winter. We got volunteers lined up for that. We're gonna be setting up the Coca-Cola rink this weekend, I believe, Saturday. We got a bunch of people coming to help volunteer with them to get that up and running.
And that's on the ball field?
Yep.
Yeah, good.
As for our budget, Leslie's took down the recommendations and was gonna get something together
Okay.
and send in. I can double check with her.
Make sure she gets it done in time.
Other than that, that's about it.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion? Carried. Moved by Bill, seconded by Dan, that council received the minutes from the Frontenac Accessibility Advisory Committee meeting held October the 4th, 2022. Anybody to report on that? No? Oh, okay. Okay, so you got nothing to say yet. All those in favor? Carried. Right. Right. Yes. All right. We have motion on communications moved by Bill, seconded by Dan, that the following correspondence be received and filed, and it's number 1 to 23. All those in favor? Carried. So just to remind you, when you get the list of communications, if there's any you would like to pull out and have staff research a little more, then when we come to this point, you ask to pull them out, and then the next meeting, the staff would have the report. Okay, all those in favor? Oh, yep, carried. Bylaws moved by Philip Smith, seconded by Nikki Gowdy, that bylaw 2023-01 being a bylaw to enter into an agreement with the town of Perth for the provisions of building inspection services be read a first, second, and third time, and finally pass this 10th day of January 2023. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Carried. Okay. Moved by Nikki Gowdy and seconded by Philip Smith, that bylaw 2023-02 being a bylaw to appoint building inspectors be read a first, second, and third time, and finally pass this 10th day of January 2023. Discussion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Moved by Philip Smith, seconded by Nikki Gowdy, that bylaw 2023-03 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2022-15, being a bylaw to appoint building inspectors for Part 8 of the building code be read a first, second, and third time, and finally pass this 10th day of January 2023. All those in favor? People did hear the background or read the background that the South Frontenac.
Oh, it's in here. in
Part
the new
8.
Business.
Okay, oh, it's coming. All right.
Mhm.
I'm ahead of the
Yes. you're right.
agenda. Bylaws moved by Nikki Gowdy, seconded by Philip Smith, that bylaw 2023-04 being a bylaw to amend Schedule B fee schedule of bylaw 2020-08 being a bylaw to govern the operation of cemeteries. Questions, comments? All those in favor?
Yeah, there's no notice of motions. You're right here.
Okay. Oh,
Notice of motions.
is there any notice of motions?
No, there are not.
Any giving of motions?
No, Madam Mayor.
And new or other business?
This is the letter.
This is the letter. Kathy, can you tell us about this.
For sure. We received the letter, but Louise Fagnito, the CAO for South Frontenac, actually had a meeting with Corey Klatt and myself. Darlene Plumley from the Islands was not there, so we did a Zoom meeting. And she basically said to us that they are pulling out of doing the Part 8 for the municipalities.
Which is septic tank.
Which is the septic system that the health unit used to do. Then South Frontenac took it on and administered it for the islands, Central and North Frontenac. And we entered into an agreement and go forth from there. The amount of work, they have so much of their own work to do. They just are unable to be able to handle the Part 8 any longer for us. So that's what this letter is about. So what they did, she did mention that the agreement does require 12-month notice, which they are giving us, so to December 31st of this year. She did mention that they certainly would be willing, if we find that we can pull out sooner than that, they have no issues with that. We would work it through. So we're going to be, and that's why with the recommend, I spoke with Andy. So I think we'll be looking at how to approach this and what we can do ourselves, if we can do it that way, and we'll bring a report certainly to council, what we are going to look at to see whether we can do ourselves in-house with the staff we have, or if maybe we would go with North Frontenac. I'm not sure at this point, but we haven't had any discussions with North as to what they're doing at this point. So, okay.
And our motion reads, first of all, moved by Philip and seconded by Nikki, that council received for information the letter from South Frontenac giving notice that it's terminating the agreement providing services regarding Part 8 of the Ontario Building Code and will not accept new applications after August 31st, 2023. And further, that development services staff bring a report to council as soon as possible to provide options for alternative arrangements. Any discussion? We will hear about this again, maybe twice. All those in favor? Carried.
3 times.
Yeah. But it was good to have that couple of years break, eh, Andy? Before we had to deal with it. It's been the craziest 2 years for folks, so as far as the numbers. Okay. Now we are going into closed session, moved by Nikki and seconded by Philip, that council move into closed section pursuant to section 239(2) of the Municipal Act to discuss the following: litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, section 239(2) bracket E. All those in favor? Carried. Okay.